Welcome to today's class. We are going to introduce topic 2 of our communication skills and report writing. Now, today we are going to look at the channels of communication in brief. And these channels of communication, they are simply reminding us that anytime you want to communicate as a major player in the communication field, then you need to fully understand what does it entail when you say you want to communicate. That's why different types of communication channels are domiciled on these 3 areas. Number 1, you need to understand the different types of communication so that whatever you want to deliver, to what extent are you going to deliver this message. Number 2, you need to understand how these communication channels are going to affect the entire process of communication. Because if you use the wrong channel, then even if you have the best message so far, it is not going to reach the intended person, and therefore the entire spirit of communication, which is to foster mutual understanding, it is not going to fully be achieved. And lastly, you recognize the different communication directions within the organization, because in the organization, when we talk of different directions, we have the upward, we have the downward, and we have the lateral. Now, for this upward communication, it means that employees at all cadres of management, they are sharing feedback to their seniors in terms of engagement. The opposite is true for the downward, where the seniors are disseminating policies, programs, regulations to their employees. Lateral, it is about the colleagues, people who are on the same level in the managerial grid, and they are either consulting or they are sharing ideas amongst themselves. So those are the 3 key issues on the channels of communication. You need to understand the type of communication you are making. You need to understand those channels. And lastly, you need to fully acknowledge the directions that are there within the organization itself. And on this perspective, there are 3 types of communication, which are: the first one, it is verbal. The second one is written, and the third one is audio visual. This audio visual is the one that we always refer to as the body language, use of signs and others, written and others. So now, if we are looking at these 3 elements, then it is in the interest of the communicator to ask himself, when will I use verbal? When will I use written? When will I use audiovisual or body language? So that our main objective is to foster mutual understanding, which I remember I said, communication, it is a term that was developed from a Latin word, commune, which means common. And therefore, any channel you are adopting, it is to make sure that there is that commonality between the sender of the message and the recipient of the message. So under verbal communication, this is when we share information by word of mouth or through talking, and therefore ensure that whoever is our recipient is an individual who is going to be able to follow, is going to be able to get, or is going to be able to find a noble way of getting whatever we are sharing. And this can be done one-on-one, which is face-to-face. It can be done via a telephone call or any video link or teleconferencing, which we are going maybe to put in the same perspective. So if you are going to choose on verbal communication, which in the subsequent lessons we shall be able to look at the advantages and disadvantages of it, the key issue is verbal communication, these are spoken words. So choice of the right words, choice of the right language, and understanding of the recipient forms the basis of doing this activity. And therefore, if you are not going to indict yourself to those avenues, then you might find yourself as a person communicating to himself or herself. And some of the recommendations are usually put in place. You first say hello, you think before you speak, you be receptive of new ideas, you can repeat the person's name so that you are sure you are talking to the right person if it is via telephone calls. You ask questions because you are now prompting for a conversation. Listen as much as possible because you'll be able to get what is expected. If it is face-to-face, maintain eye contact so that the person can be able to follow whatever you are sharing. Mirror the other person, meaning try to always think about the other person. If you are whispering, if you are mumbling, if you are not audible, then what is the other person going through? And make sure that you are fully prepared, because communication via verbal means it is always a very challenging task, especially if you don't have that confidence and also you cannot be able to articulate some of the issues that are there. The second one, it is written, and this is when we use documentation, or maybe when we are able to paraphrase our ideas in form of documents. And also written communication, we have the mechanisms to consider when you are choosing it. Number one, the people you want to address through written communication, they should be literate, meaning they can be able to read and write. Also, you must ensure that the mechanisms of engagement across the point, they are able to come forth very easily, and also the message, if it is targeting a wider or a larger audience, then it can be the best for you to use across the point. So if you want to undertake this task, point number one, make sure that you picture the receiver before you begin to write, because what will be the position of the receiver? Will this person be able to read, or maybe be able to comprehend whatever maybe you are using as a person? Then use simple words. Colloquialism, ambiguity, and technical words are going to either piss off or switch off those who are your listeners, because some of them will not be able to understand terminologies like tandem or berimai, fidei, and others. So whatever you are sharing in written, ensure they are very simple words. Number three, be polite and clear, because don't be derogative or maybe look like whatever you are sharing is something that is coded so that they cannot be able to get whatever you are sharing. Be brief as possible. Reading culture in most of individuals, it is very negative, and therefore people tend to shy off from long passages or maybe long messages. So try to paraphrase what you want to share and put a very good summary across the point. And lastly, use strong active verbs. I suggest, instead of, don't be negative, because when you do that, then you also somehow try to derail any level of engagement that could have come from such individuals. The third one, it is the audiovisual, body language, or non-verbal. This is where we use a lot of signs and other related mechanisms that we are putting into perspective. Research has shown that 55% of our messages are carried by the signs or the actions that we use. And that's why we always hear people saying actions speak louder than words. Whether those words are spoken or are written, the actions you are exhibiting, they are going to be very, very much taken by individuals. Because if you are in a funeral and you are laughing, then that action of laughing, in a funeral, people are mourning you, you are laughing, it is going, however much you are sending condolences, They will not look at the condolences you are sharing via written or spoken. They will look at your action of laughing, and they use it to try and put everything in it. So it is always very, very prudent to make sure that any form of engagement you are going to use, it is going to be quite positive. So some of the non-verbal cues we use, body language, that is movement of our body parts. How does it resonate with your message, and is it going to be quite positive? So we are being told, be simple, be direct, be warm, be sincere, and others. Number two, it is eye contact, maintaining that eye contact, because sometimes non-verbal actions follow our verbal messages, and therefore that is one item that comes across. We have facial expressions that also come into the same. The posture, this is the way you are standing or sitting. The touch, what you are either putting in place in terms of gender and other activities, and the space you are putting into perspective across the point. So that's a brief summary of the channels of communication, and I will still insist on the 3 avenues whereby whatever you will be putting in place, make sure that you understand it fully, and those channels are part and parcel of your day-to-day expectations, and you understand those directions. God willing, we shall proceed from there. If there is any question, let us use our channels. As I have said, in channels of communication. Thank you.